This is the Capitol Rundown.
There is a 4-year track record under Donald Trump. This isn't a guess.
If he is elected, Donald Trump intends to give tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations.
So when Donald Trump comes to Potterville to talk about the economy, I really have to wonder what he's going to say.
It's all straight ahead. The Capitol Rundown starts now.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Siobhan Klebfer. A lot happened in the election battleground state of Michigan last week, so let's get you caught up. This election year, you cannot become president if you do not come to Michigan first. At least that's what the candidates are hoping. Former President Donald Trump was in the small Eaton County town of Potterville on Thursday. Terrell Bailey has the details.
Former President Donald Trump back in the state of Michigan. During the roughly hour-long speech, Trump touched on a multitude of topics.
Michigan manufacturing will dominate like never before.
The auto industry proving to be a big topic. Trump says he wants more auto plants built in America, specifically Michigan.
We're going to bring back your car industry. We're going to let them build plants, but they're not building them in Mexico. They're going to build them in the United States of America.
Now, according to the latest CBS News polling, Michigan is considered a toss-up state. The former president making a new announcement concerning IVF treatments and their costs.
Under the Trump administration, your government will pay for, or your insurance company will be mandated to pay for, all costs associated with IVF treatment, fertilization for women.
Topics like inflation, border security, and electricity were also touched on. Trump dubbing a second administration as an energy-independent one.
New drilling, new pipelines, new refineries, new power plants, new reactors, and we will slash the red tape.
The former president has spent a lot of time in Michigan recently. His Livingston County speech resulted in the state's Bureau of Elections investigating the sheriff over allegations of violation of the state's Campaign Finance Act. Senate candidate Mike Rogers was in attendance of that event and finds the new allegations untrue.
Listen, I think this is all nonsense. I think it's a political year. It's a political stunt. And I think Democrats are worried.
As electric vehicles continue to be a hot topic, so does home ownership. The president at times criticizing the Biden-Harris administration over its current economic climate.
She does not care if you lose your job or cannot find another comparable job. She doesn't care. She does not care if you have to run up your credit card.
The former president even mentioning AI, Trump saying that in order to compete with China, we will need at least twice the amount of electricity that we have now. In Potterville, Terrell Bailey, CBS News, Detroit.
Well, the Democratic Party used the Trump campaign's Michigan visits as a chance to hit him on Project 2025, and that's the policy document created by the Conservative Heritage Foundation and several people connected to the former president. Governor Gretchen Whitmer and Lansing Mayor Andy Shore were among the speakers in a virtual news conference held by the Harris campaign. They called out what they consider Mr. Trump's failed economic record. They also say the Project 2025 agenda will raise taxes for average Michiganders by nearly $4,000 per year.
You know, when I talk to Michiganders about how they want the economy to work for them, the things that I hear more often than not is good paying union jobs. So when Donald Trump comes to Potterville to talk about the economy, I really have to wonder what he's going to say.
UAW Local 900 President Dwayne Walker also participated in the conference, highlighting Vice President Harris's pro-union record. Mr. Trump and his campaign have worked to distance themselves from Project 2025. Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris and her running mate, Governor Tim Walz, wrapped up a 2-day bus tour throughout southeast Georgia on Thursday. It's a critical battleground state that Democrats narrowly won 4 years ago. Campaign officials believe that in order to beat Donald Trump in the state, they will need more than Atlanta and the suburbs that delivered for Joe Biden in 2020.
So let's not pay too much attention to the polls, because we are running as the underdog. Okay? And we have some hard work ahead of us, but we like hard work. Hard work is good work. Hard work is good work. And with your help, we are going to win this November. We are going to win this November. Yes, we will.
Raphael Warnock, Georgia's first black senator, won re-election in 2022 by nearly 3 percentage points. Mr. Biden carried Georgia by only a 1/4 percentage point about 2 years earlier. Some of the people involved in Warnock's win are now on Harris's campaign team.
If he is elected, Donald Trump intends to give tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations. He intends to cut Social Security and Medicare. And he wants to impose what, in effect, is a national sales tax on everyday products and basic necessities. And it will cost, the economists will tell you, it will cost a typical American family nearly $4,000 a year. So, Georgia, on top of all of this, if Donald Trump wins in November, he intends to end the Affordable Care Act, to take us back to a time when insurance companies, we're not going back. We're not going. We are not. We're going forward.
Well, coming up next on the Capitol Rundown, former President Trump was not the only big-name Republican in Michigan last week. Up next, we'll tell you what Senator J.D. Vance had to say during his visit to West Michigan. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Republican nominee for Vice President J.D. Vance was also in Michigan last week. On Tuesday, he made a stop in Big Rapids to talk about the economy. When speaking to reporters after his speech, the Ohio senator was asked about something that both the Trump and Harris campaigns have been talking about: housing affordability. That's also a big issue here in Michigan. According to a May report from the University of Michigan School of Public Health, 51% of renters spend more than 30% of their annual income on housing. So are 24% of homeowners with mortgages and 14% without. Also, eviction filings increased by 38% from 2021 to 2022. The report calls this a housing crisis. Here's how Senator Vance responded.
A few things here. One, I think we should stop foreign investors from buying up American property. That's a very, very important thing. I think a second related point is, look, we have 25 million illegal aliens in this country. They're competing with Americans for scarce homes. That is fundamentally going to increase demand and thus drive up the cost of housing for American citizens. And we also have a supply problem. We're not building enough, right? It's too hard to build things in this country. Now, partially that's because energy is too expensive, so let's bring down the cost of energy. But partially that's because our regulatory environment, especially when it comes to building housing, is just insane, right? People want homes. Builders want to build homes. You should have a government that enables that as opposed to thwarts it.
Republican Congressman Bill Huizenga was at the rally and pushed back against what he said was doom and gloom coming from the Harris-Walz campaign.
There is a 4-year track record under Donald Trump. This isn't a guess. This isn't a mystery. This isn't a hypothesis about what he would do. He did it for 4 years.
Well, coming up, the controversy around the former president's visit to Arlington continues. But first, the ratings are in, and we'll have the numbers on both the DNC and the RNC. That and much more still to come. Welcome back. Both the Trump and Harris campaigns got a lot of attention during their national conventions, but the DNC drew a larger television audience. Over the 4 days of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, there was an average of 21.8 million viewers a night. Compare that to the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee with an average of 19.1 million viewers per night. And looking at just the acceptance speeches, 26.2 million people watched Vice President Kamala Harris deliver her speech. For Donald Trump, that number was 25.4 million people. But the question is, how much does it matter? Well, pollsters say the more excitement and awareness there is around a campaign, the more money flows in and the more volunteers show up to do the work. And that can lead to a dead heat race in a swing state such as Michigan. Former President Trump's visit to Potterville was the first time he detailed his version of an incident that happened while he was visiting Arlington National Cemetery. Our Washington correspondent Rashad Hudson has more on what Mr. Trump says happened and how the Army is responding.
And they say I was campaigning. I don't need, the one thing I get is plenty of publicity. I don't need that.
Former President Donald Trump publicly addressed the controversy around his visit to Arlington National Cemetery this week.
And while we were there, they said, could you take pictures over the grave of my son, my sister, my brother? Would you take pictures with us, sir? I said, absolutely, I did.
The Army says someone from Trump's team abruptly pushed the cemetery employee aside when she tried to enforce the rules against election-related videography and Section 60, the burial ground for recently fallen service members.
We didn't lose one person in 18 months.
A video posted to the former president's TikTok shows Monday's visit and him comparing his record to President Joe Biden's.
And then they took over. That disaster.
The Trump team says a family invited him to a private ceremony in Section 60 and says it has video proof of no wrongdoing on his part.
The rules are very, very clear.
The Pentagon said Thursday the cemetery employees are dedicated to honoring fallen heroes.
There are nearly, I think it's like 3,000 public ceremonies that are conducted at Arlington National Cemetery every single year without incident.
The Trump campaign said the cemetery employee was clearly suffering from a mental health episode. The Army says it's an unfair attack, but since the employee chose not to file charges, the Army considers the matter closed. Reporting in Washington, Rashad Hudson.
Coming up next on the Capitol Rundown, our Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic will be here. But first, we've got some new poll numbers on the race for Michigan's next senator. Stay tuned. There's a new poll out surveying likely Michigan voters for the U.S. Senate seat. Democratic Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin is favored right now by 4% over her Republican challenger, former U.S. Representative Mike Rogers. The Epic MRA statewide poll of 600 likely Michigan voters was conducted earlier this week. Congresswoman Slotkin's lead against her opponent is a narrow one, with the margin of error the same as her 4% lead. A month ago, almost half of those polled didn't even know either candidate, but heavy advertising seems to have boosted their notoriety. People outside of Michigan are also watching this race closely because the outcome could tip the balance of power in the U.S. Senate from blue to red. Both candidates are running to fill the seat being vacated by retiring U.S. Senator Debbie Stabenow. And turning back to presidential politics, our Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic talked to the Rundown's Jorma Duran about Michigan's status as a battleground state and how that affects the campaign trail.
It's time to get updated politically here in the state of Michigan, and nobody better than this guy right here, Tim Skubic, to help us out. Tim, former President Donald Trump made a campaign stop at a steel plant in Potterville on Thursday. Does he and his campaign believe these small town visits, which includes J.D. Vance in Big Rapids last week as well, be the key to winning Michigan in November?
You know, the question is, did he stop and eat any gizzards in Potterville? That's the major question that everybody wants to know about. But that question notwithstanding, you know, it is a very unusual strategy. Donald Trump, who is used to having tens of thousands of people in a room, is now playing to very small, intimate audiences. The only thing missing is the cocktail waitress and a small band off in the corner. But what he's trying to do is he's trying to make himself available to more people. And you'll see him on these local visits to Potterville. He was in Detroit at the National Guards thing. His running mates have been up in Big Rapids. They're making themselves available to the local media, which is a shift in their strategy and one which stands out in stark contrast to what the other folks are doing. Ms. Harris, of course, on CNN this week with her running mate, she has not done a lot of one-on-one stuff with local media, and so the Trump strategy is, let's go into this swing state of Michigan, let's make a major presence, and as a result of that, this race still remains very, very close. Pollster Bernie Porn indicating that it's a statistical dead heat, which is pretty much where it has been, except if you go back, and here's the point that Mr. Porn makes. If you look at the last poll between Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden when he was still in the race, Trump had a 7-point lead. Now the fact that she is in the race and it's tied means the Democrats are making some progress. So this state is clearly in play, Jordan.
Yeah, absolutely in play, and so are other battleground states as well. Is there any panic mode at all in the Trump campaign?
Well, look at people at home don't really understand this, and it's understandable that they don't. But how 7 states could decide the outcome of the election? All of these states are in play, and they are all a statistical dead heat, which means it's a jump ball, it's a flip of the coin, and the advertising will make an impact. What is next is this debate on September 10th, which could really move the numbers depending on how that goes, Jorma.
100%. Tim, always good to see and hear from you. We appreciate the update.
All right, everybody have a safe weekend, okay?
Well, coming up next on the Capitol Rundown, last week was the anniversary of a turning point in American civil rights. So we will tell you how Michiganders recognize the March on Washington at the state capitol next. Wednesday was the 61st anniversary of Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous March on Washington, advocating for the civil and economic rights of African Americans. The MLK Commission of Mid-Michigan held a free community event on Thursday to mark the anniversary and pay tribute to Dr. King's legacy. The Rundown's photojournalist Chris Tom was there.
Freedom is won with every generation, that it is not guaranteed to us, and that we have to be willing to fight for it. Marches like this, awareness about issues that sometimes we go through our daily lives and not understand, are important for us as a country.
One of the things I see is I also see the young people in addition to the adults. So we need to encourage the young people, make room for them, let them spread their wings and keep moving the baton.
Look around you at all the beautiful people, all the different colors and shades that's all out here today, for that same dream that he had that day.
I believe that America is unwilling to accept a segregated country. I believe America is unwilling to accept injustice. I believe that America is a land where people believe in its ideas, in all of the hopes of it.
Look at this nation and say, what are the critical issues that we need to be fighting for? And then you need to fight, organize, keep going, keep pushing, and never give up.
Well, if you're interested in getting more political news from Michigan and Washington, we've got just the thing for you. You can sign up for our Capitol Rundown newsletter. It's just one email each week, and you can get it by pointing your cell phone camera at the screen right now. This will take you to the sign up page, and thanks for watching.